How's it going?
I'm good. How you doing?
Yeah, good.
Good.
So I think it was a year ago, I held my 40th birthday right here in probably one of the most important local breweries in Calgary. Is that what you call a cider house?
Well, not really. Like, there's no brewing that happens. So we would like to call it a cidery.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay, so I used the wrong word. But so this is SunnyCider. I'm here with Dennis Scanlon. We're going to unwrap why this is one of the most important places here in Calgary and in this interview. And I think we're going to get a really interesting history of how kind of Dennis got here and where they're going and some of the really unique things that happen in this particular location we're in Northeast Calgary, right?
That's right. Yeah, Franklin Industrial. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So take me back to where all of this started. Before even SunnyCider, when you were in backyards growing food.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how I got into local food. Is I kind of fell into it, taking a step back from IT world, and I started doing some urban farming, and just kind of more as a something to do. I was kind of stay-at-home dad, that sort of thing, but I knew I wanted to do something else, and I wanted to be outside. I was enjoying gardening, so I kind of fell into that. I was building gardens for people, and I wanted to grow food for people, so got into that. Met a lot of great people through that whole thing. Started a group called YYC Growers in the whole scheme of things, and then kind of one thing led to another, and then a few people in Sunnyside got together, and we started making cider, which is kind of what, we saw all of these apples falling every fall, and there's a really cool orchard in Sunnyside called, I'm not going to remember the name of it. Yeah, anyway, there's a great orchard there. There's probably about 25, 30 trees of different varieties, pear trees, cherry trees, apples. And we would go and collect apples there. People would see us collecting apples. Oh, we've got apples. Let's, that sort of thing. So we ended up making cider. I'm going to say, I think on our sign it says 2013 is when we started making cider. Took us a few years to make good cider, but
okay.
Yeah.
And so let's just go back to the IT piece for a second.
Okay.
What was the kind of insight that you had that made you want to leave IT and go into food? Because that's the theme really that has kind of carried through to this business.
Yeah, well, I think it was more kind of hands-on with the kids, that sort of thing. I had two young boys at the time, and they were homeschooled, and we were starting to, my wife and I were starting to pay people to look after our children, which we never wanted to get to in our lives. We wanted to be able to raise our kids ourselves, and so we just made the choice that I would be that person that would raise the kids. And in doing so, I kind of took a step back from the IT world, which wasn't too big in the heart. It was it was a job. It was paid the bills. It was really, really good. It was good for our family at the time, but no real inspiration, no real kind of motivation there to kind of take it to anything else. And so I always thought with the food growing, I kind of fell into that. I didn't really even know what food security was, food sustainability. I kind of learned all of that while I was getting into it. And it was kind of a neat segue into kind of learning about local food and why it's so important to buy where you live, that sort of thing. So I think that's kind of, again, IT to urban farming to cideries. I think it was kind of where it went.
So urban farming in that you were farming backyards from other people.
That's right.
You were turning their lawns into market gardens and selling at the farmer's market.
Exactly.
How long did you do that for?
About 6 years. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then at what point in the urban farming, like you said that you started experimenting with this stuff, but I mean, what you've got here, I was here the other night, which is when I told you I'd come back and have this conversation. There's a lot of capital involved in setting something like this up.
Yes.
It's a big risk. It's a huge, one of the advantages of urban farming is that it's a lower capital investment compared to going out and buying a big farm and a tractor and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So you went from kind of a low capital urban farm market garden to this.
Yeah.
And what was the
the reason for the chaos? Yeah. I think for me, it's interesting because I go back to when I was in college. I took business in college back in late 80s, early 90s. And I knew I always wanted to own a business. And so I kind of got there with Dirt Boys, the urban farming business, with YYC Growers. That was my kind of first foray into co-ops, cooperative style businesses. And but neither of those was kind of where I wanted to be with owning a business. And so when some of the neighbors came together and said, well, let's turn this cidery into a business, I was like, this is what I, again, people say, oh, is cider your dream? Is that exactly what you want to do? I said, not really, but it's the business piece that I thrive on. It's the entrepreneurship, the changing of every day is a new challenge. It's not like you go to work as a web developer and you've got to host a website and change a page and all that sort of thing. It's the same stuff over and over again. Whereas with a business like this, every day, somebody else comes up to you and says, oh, we've got a new style of bottle you can try. I'm like, oh, okay, what's the price in it? And you run the numbers, you're like, yeah, it's not going to work. Or you're like, yeah, let's give it a shot. Or let's, right now, canning is a big issue right now, trying to figure out cheaper solutions for canning. Things like that, playing around with all the different companies out there, partnering with local businesses to do canning, all of that sort of thing. And that's what I thrive on. So,
and you guys kind of timed it well. I mean, there's been this massive resurgence of craft alcohol in this province, and specifically this city. Like Calgary, I think, has taken off more than Edmonton.
That's right.
With, just in this little industrial park, you've got distillery.
Yeah, there's a distillery called Broken Spirits.
Yeah.
A gluten-free brewery called Heathens, and then us, a cidery here.
Yeah,
all in the same parking lot.
Well, and then just like a stone's throw away, we've got Tool Shed.
Yeah.
And Common Crown.
That's right.
I think Red Bison went under, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
But just in this little district, we've almost got our own little kind of alcohol district, so to speak, local craft alcohol.
We call it Craft District.
The Craft District, okay, perfect. Well, you got to call it something.
Yeah.
What was the reason for Alberta, of all places, to open up to this sort of...
Well, for me, I wouldn't live anywhere else. I love Calgary. Calgary is such an awesome city. I like the scenery here. I like the seasons. I like being close to the mountains. It's just a great city, and despite all the, I'm not a huge oil and gas kind of guy, but there's a lot of money here, that sort of thing. Why would we do it here? I mean, BC's got their lion's share of cideries anyway. Makes sense. You're in apple country, sure. Okanagan, right? Out here, though, we figure there is, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of pounds of apples that are grown in the city right here. Not commercially, but on people's backyards. And so, or front yards. You've got crabapple trees, pear trees, apple trees. There's, I think you were saying, 100 species of apples that grow here in Calgary. And our goal is to get as much of that as we can into our cider. Sure, we buy BC fruit, and they love it because we're helping out the orchard industry out there too. I mean, they've got all the cideries out there too, but shipping cider out here, it's not very far. We're 7 hours away, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So this is kind of one of the reasons that I was hinting at. One of the most important local craft alcohol producers in this region, and Dennis has just kind of alluded to that. And so tell me a little bit about, obviously, like you said, you're buying apple juice and other juices from BC to produce your product. But was the idea to integrate Calgary fruit part of the plan from the beginning?
It was always the plan. I mean, I think that's how SunnyCider was born. Was using all, like the last year we did 2,000 liters of juice of cider, in Tim's garage, and so that was a ton. It was so much local fruit, and that year every batch turned out, and it was awesome cider, and people were like, "This is great. I'd buy this." And then we thought, well, you know what? Let's do this. And so the next year we collected fruit, and I think I can't remember what we did, about 10,000 pounds of fruit that first year.
But that was you guys collecting fruit.
Us, and actually going out picking at that time. We don't do that anymore, but that was us going out and picking, and then people dropping fruit off to us. So.
Yeah, and so that's the next evolution, is that you guys actually have not only a decentralized orchard, Calgary, but you also have a decentralized harvesting crew,
that's right,
so to speak. Maybe not 100%, but talk to me a little bit about how that works.
Well, we... like I said, that first year would have been 3 years ago now, 3 seasons ago. We went out and picked. People were like emailing us or calling us, friends and people that knew us and that sort of thing. We've got a tree, come and pick it. Yeah, okay, that's awesome. So we'd show up with buckets and ladders and pickers and pick these trees clean. And then come to last year, we ended up with about 25,000 pounds of Calgary fruit. And that was kind of overwhelming too. You know, if you think, and we didn't pick, I don't think I picked one apple last year. That was all people just picking their own trees, picking crab apples, all that sort of thing, which I do miss. I love picking trees, but again, you have to think, let people do it. Pick your trees. So we've got a few people out there that will pick trees for you. Yeah. We just don't advertise that we pick your tree. And then this year, I think we're already at almost 20,000 pounds, and we probably still have another month of fruit collection going. So I think we'll beat last year's record. So,
and then how does it work? People bring fruit here.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of, I think, at least last year there's a couple of different ways that you can pay them.
Yeah, so we've adopted what's called Calgary dollars. It's a local, they call it a complementary currency, so it's the same value as a Canadian dollar, except you can only spend it at any business that's related to Calgary dollars. It's in this local business network. There's about 200, 250 businesses that are in this. SunnyCider is a big one. We're the biggest onboarder of Calgary dollars in Calgary right now.
Wow.
So I think this year we're set to pay out about $3,000 to $4,000 in Calgary dollars.
Wow.
So the way that works is we pay 25 cents a pound for apples and pears, and then people can come back
in Calgary dollars.
In Calgary dollars, yeah. And then people come back in, or at the same time they drop the fruit off, they can buy cider here at with 40% of the purchase being Calgary dollars.
Okay.
So it's like a 40% discount, which is pretty big on a cider purchase. So yeah.
So let me break this down for you. So the reason I wanted to come and talk to Dennis is because permaculture is not the solar panel, the roof, or the rain barrel, but the connections between them. And a lot of times we focus on kind of these physical elements that end up on our properties. But Dennis is actually using all the same principles in the way that he's connecting community. And I'm not sure if that was always an intention of yours, but in doing so, so you're using a resource that typically goes to waste.
Yeah.
You're getting people out into the environment to pick those things and bring them here. You're adding value to that product.
Yeah.
You're reimbursing people within using a local currency. Wasn't there, last year, weren't you offering to crush it in exchange for a percentage of the juice as well? Like if people wanted to?
Not really. I mean, there was a few people that we worked that out with, but for the most part, we try to stay away from that sort of thing. Sometimes we'll rent out equipment on that side of things. Yeah.
Totally. Okay. And so there's all these connections, and then there's one more connection that we haven't talked about yet.
Right.
So what happens to the leftover pumice when?
Well, we've got this great connection with a farm called Blue Mountain Farms. It's just up in Carstairs.
Yeah.
And they come to the city once a week to pick up brewery spent grain. And as well, they swing by here during our pressing season and pick up all the pumice. And it goes and they feed their chickens and pigs with it. And then even one step further, we end up with a pig roast in the fall using one of their pigs that's been finished on our apple pulp. So it's kind of a neat thing. The other thing that we're doing too is we use a lot of local berries and cherries and that sort of thing. So we buy the juice from a farm called Pearson's Berry Farm, buy the juice, and then they're giving us the leftover pumice. The cherry pits or the cherry bits and the Saskatoons and even black currants we got now, and then we dump those into our cider now, and we're fermenting on those to add a different flavor to our cider.
So it's kind of like with wine where you ferment on the skins.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of fermenting on the.
Exactly, you get a totally different flavor because what we were doing before is what they call back sweetening, dumping the juice the sour cherry juice into our cider until we got to a flavor that we like. But it's expensive. You think sour cherry juice and Saskatoon juice, you need so many berries to get that juice, and we're using probably, I'm going to say, about $1,000 of juice per batch, that sort of thing. And we've been able to eliminate probably at least half of that juice by fermenting on the pumice as well,
and improving the flavor.
Exactly, it's a totally different flavor. Not totally, still has that flavor to it, but you can tell it's more instilled in the cider rather than just kind of a juice that's been added.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, how long have you guys been in operation now? A couple of years?
Yeah, just over. The cider house has been open since May 2019, so just over a year.
And I mean, already since I've started coming here, I've seen massive changes, both in how your cider tastes. Like you guys are definitely evolving, and they're becoming more complex. But even I was just looking back there, all the equipment you guys have got. You guys have started adding more equipment and more stuff. It's getting almost to the point where
Well, we can't get around anyway because right now you see, like, we just got a new shipment of kegs, and then we've got all the apples and pears that were dropped off on the weekend, and we also just got 10 totes of juice in from the Okanagan today. So there's really no room to do anything. They're supposed to press tonight, but I don't know how they're going to do it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what are the plans for the coming year?
Oh, I think ultimately, so the kind of nice thing with Okanagan juice is we've now got connections out there. We're able to bring our price down a little bit. We've been playing around with, because we used to bring the juice in and freeze it, flash freeze it here in town. And freezer storage is very expensive though. So we're trying to eliminate as much of that as we can. So we ferment right away, because once it's fermented, we can leave it in the totes up to a year. And it just ages and more flavors come out. And then what else? You know, I think, again, it's playing with different berries, different local fruits. We've never had to pay excise because we've never used anything outside of Canada into our cider. So
excise being?
Excise is like a duty that's paid on, you know, so it's not much. It's like 30 cents a liter or something like that if you use something from out of country. Okay. So if you're using mangoes or something like that, then you have to pay 30 cents a liter excise.
Well, that adds up.
Oh yeah, totally. And cider right now is a really high markup compared to beer. Beer is 10 cents a liter for self-distributed beer. We're 30 cents a liter, so it's 3 times as much. And then if we go through what's called Liquor Connect, which is that central distribution in Edmonton, I think it goes up to $1.80 a liter. And for beer, it's I think $1. So it's a lot. So we're trying to join forces. There's a few cideries here in Alberta now, and we're trying to join forces to try and change that markup. So that's another thing that we're going to work on the next year. Another one is canning. Like I mentioned before, canning's been a bit of a nightmare here in Calgary or Alberta, I guess, because during COVID, all the breweries switched from kegging to cans, and the mobile canning unit that was coming around switched their minimums, and we don't hit the minimums anymore, so we have to ship our cider off for canning at the moment, and then we'll hopefully work with some of the other breweries around here and try and kind of collectively buy a canning unit.
Yeah, so many challenges.
Yeah.
It's I've often thought that the craft alcohol market was very, very challenging, and it sounds like there's all sorts of kind of roadblocks that you've got to deal with.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story.
No worries, anytime.
If you guys are interested in learning more about Dennis and Tim, and there's a few other folks I think that are involved down here as well, come check them out. Just let's get your address to these folks.
Yeah, it's number 1, 3300 14th Avenue Northeast. You can check us out on sunnycider.ca, all of our information. If you've got fruit, apples, pears, berries, whatever, we'll take it. So we usually do fruit collection on the weekends, but all our information is on the website.
Okay. So I'll make sure I put a link to their website in the show notes below. And come check it out. Come have a cider. I'm sure that you guys don't have a menu right now because of COVID, right?
Oh, it's on. Oh, yeah, no food menu. No, we don't do any food. You can bring your own food in. You can order in. Okay. But it's all cider now.
Okay, so just before we close out, why don't you tell us the different ciders you've got on tap right now?
Oh, yeah, we've got, number 1, we've got apple. It's just our straight regular apple. So right now it's a 50% Calgary fruit cider, so it's really cool. Raspberry rosé, we just won an award for that one. That's a wild fermented, meaning we don't add our own yeast. It's just all the natural yeast that's on the raspberries and the apples. Cool. We've got Saskatoon, which is one of our regular ones, using local Saskatoons. Sour cherry. We've also got a cherry vanilla, using sour cherries, but with vanilla finish on it. We also have ginger apple. We ferment on the ginger, so it's got a really nice kind of all-around ginger flavor to it. A ginger hopped, so we added hops to the ginger as well. What else do we have? Juneberry, it's called. It's a Saskatoon, ginger, and vanilla. Okay. That's really good. And I think that's all we've got going. We've got another one. It's a regular apple, but it's been back sweetened with honey. Okay. So that's actually in the tank right now.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, hope you found that interesting, and come check out SunnyCider, and maybe I'll see you here sometime. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob. So this is the masher, basically. So all the apples get washed. They get thrown in the bottom here. It's got the conveyor belt that goes up, pulls the apples or pears up into the top there. And on the top is a wheel that's almost like a carburetor. And so it'll spin and crush the apples, and it plops into our press after that. So we can go through, our press is 250 liters. We get 250 liters of apple pulp at one time that we get. So this is our Hydropress. So this comes out of Scandinavia, actually. So they kind of created this style of press. They're basically, you hook water up, tap water up here, and it's the water pressure that fills the bladder on the inside, squeezes the mash on the side, and all the juice starts running down here into this trough at the bottom, collected in buckets, and then we pour it into totes. It runs on whatever 30 psi of water. So you kind of think, is that enough pressure to actually crush apples or press apples? And it totally is. It's pretty efficient. So this is our fermentation room. This is a temperature-controlled room that we keep at about 14 degrees. Our yeast really likes that temperature, so we bring our totes in here, throw yeast into it, and then it sits here for about 3 to 4 weeks, and it finishes fermentation in about that time, and then we rack it off. So we pump it into another tote, and then we leave it sit out at room temperature for anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, sometimes even 8 months before it's ready to drink. So this is the bright tank. So what this is a glycol jacket on the outside that cools down the cider to about 2 degrees, and then we force carbonate it. So that's all of our cider is not can condition or bottle conditioned. We actually do force carbonation, so it comes out of the fermentation cycle. It's flat, and then we carbonate it just because that's kind of what the market demands these days. We fill it through the bottom or the side, that sort of thing. Pump cider into it, and then the same thing. We keg it or can it off of the side arm as well. And everything, if there's any sediment in it, because it's cold, it all drops out to the bottom as well.